Hi, class. Today there were a few quotes that I just could not find as I tried to search on the PDF. So I thought it would make me feel better if I talked about some of those quotes. So here's a long one. All right. Again, we were just kind of focusing on what's the best way to describe it? Kind of the alternative, um, unorthodox ways that Cormac McCarthy kind of describes things. He makes us think, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, so real quick, I grabbed one of McCarthy's sentences and kind of changed it to a more conventional way. So take a look at this sentence. It was very dark. Since eyesight was futile, more responsibility was placed on the sense of hearing. Yeah, it makes sense, right? Why does that make sense? Well, thinking about things I've heard, people who lose a sense, right? Over time, the other senses that they have become more. What's a good way to describe it? More powerful, right? Stronger. Right? So, for example, Ray Charles can't see, but his sense of sound, right, hearing, is probably more developed than most of ours. So it makes sense. But old McCarthy says, nah, I'm going to have a little bit of fun with this, right? So let's take a look at the way he describes it. Okay. And I think this is on page 15 in the book. So anywhere between 7 and 8 on the PDF. All right. So the blackness he woke to on those nights was sightless and impenetrable. A blackness to hurt your ears with listening. Okay, stop. I'm going to stop myself there, right? More responsibility was placed on sense of hearing, or a blackness to hurt your ears with listening. Right? It was so dark. Reminds me of back when I used to do a lot of camping. Have you ever been camping and been far enough away from any light, whether it be a campfire or a lantern, and it is so dark that you can put your hand in front of your face and you can't see it? That's the darkness that he's trying to get us to realize here, right? So our sense of sight does us no good. So more responsibility is placed on those other senses. So McCarthy is saying that it is so dark, it is so black, that, it's hurting our ears. This is really good. All right. Often he had to get up. No sound but the wind and the bear and the blackened trees. He rose and stood tottering, and I'm going to stop again. For some strange reason, this word is used a lot. A lot. I'm not sure why. I would say that it's not because McCarthy doesn't have a plethora of words to use. He must really like that one. All right, so let me start over. He rose and stood tottering in that cold, autistic dark with his arms outheld for balance, while the vestibular calculations in his skull cranked out their reckonings. I'm going to stop again. That's one of those long sentences. And look at what comes next. An old chronicle. Guys, that's not even a sentence. It's a fragment. So let's talk about the description, and then maybe we can talk about why an old chronicle. All right. So let's start over here. We got a lot to unpack. He rose and stood tottering in that cold, autistic dark. Now, why is he using autistic as an adjective? I have no idea, but I'm intrigued. Right? So let's if you're watching this, think about what comes to mind. Well, when I see the word autistic, I think of somebody, right, that has autism. What does that mean? Well, it can mean various things. There are several forms of it, right? Usually, something's not developed, right? There might be a sense that maybe there's a lack of an ability to speak, right? To communicate, right? To pick up on any nonverbal communication. But with that said, on the flip side, people that are that have this oftentimes have a heightened sense of something else, right? Many are good at math, music, and things like that. So maybe he's using this as some sort of way to describe the dark as imbalanced. But let's take a look at a definition down here. All right. Okay, we talked about that. All right, now it's considered a derogatory. Could be slang. It could be offensive. But let's think about this. Look at this. Socially inept. We talked about that. Self-absorbed or stupid. I like this one so far. Characterized by abnormal and unhealthy focus or persistence. Now, I really like this. Self-absorbed, unhealthy focus or persistent. Right. Let's read that again now. He rose and stood, tottering in that cold, autistic dark, with his arms out held for balance. Yeah, right. The darkness is persistent. It is self-absorbed. It's almost personified. It is taking over. Right? In the same way that some people who are autistic have patterns. They repeat things. So he's using that to describe how, right, the kind of force that the darkness has. Again, I mean, I would have never in a million years said, yep, I'm going to describe dark with autistic. But look at this, with his arms out held for balance. Because it's dark, right? So check that out. There's a lot going on here. And so you have, it's your ears are burning because you are using every ounce of sense that you have to kind of make up for the fact that your sense of sight is useless. We're using balance. All right. Now check out this word. While the vestibular calculations in the skull cranked out their reckonings. All right. I'm not going to lie. I'm not really sure what vestibular means. Yeah, I'm not even going to guess that one, guys. Let's go take a look. Can this be kind of irritating? Maybe. But if you look these words up and understand, it's going to open up a whole new world. All right, vestibular. Well, what's vestibular mean? Let's see. Balance. It's the sensory system in most mammals, part of the inner ear. Okay. Contributing to the sense of balance. Spatial. All right. So again, it's just, I think McCarthy's using that to describe how we are, right, we are putting all of our faith in every other sense that we have because eyesight does us no good. Let's read that again. He rose and stood, tottering in that cold, autistic dark, right? Because dark is persistent. It's not going away, with his arms out held for balance, while the vestibular calculations in the skull cranked out the reckonings. I guess if we really wanted to get into it, we maybe the next time we're alone in the dark, right? Try to walk, right? Try try to walk with your arms stretched out, right, and balance yourself, because if you can't really see, you might lose your sense of balance. Very interesting. Okay. Cranked Out the Reckonings. An old chronicle. All right. Chronicle is a way to an old chronicle. I'm gonna look up chronicle too. Chronicle is like a way to present information, to document. So opinion. Let's see. Why? I want a definition. I spelled it wrong, sorry. A factual written account of important historical event in the order of their occurrence. A record. A factual. Alright. Wow. Okay. So he uses a long sentence to come up with some crazy ways to describe how we are trying to make up, right, for our sense of sight since it's gone. Right? And then he says an old chronicle. Right. So I think what he's right. Well, first of all, this isn't a sentence. It's a phrase, and this phrase is, right, it's saying an old chronicle. So it's a noun determiner. So basically, an old chronicle is describing everything that he said here. Human nature. This man is relying on muscle memory, right? The fact that he's walked for many years, right? His brain has a neural pathway, so he's relying on a lot of things that maybe he took for granted before. Right? He's hoping that that the power of habit is somehow going to take over, right? And that's why it's called an old chronicle. So this is really cool. All right. To seek out the upright. Another fragment. No fall, but preceded by a declination. All right, declination. Come on, Cormac. Sometimes I feel like he's going, I know all these words and you don't. Let's see. Declination. Proposition in the face of a formal refusal. Or celestial equator. Right? A formal refusal. Let's go back to this. Oh, okay. No fall, but preceded by a declination. Right? So all this stuff, these senses, right? This old chronicle, this habit, this muscle memory that he's developed, is refusing to let him fall. I think. All right. He took great marching steps. Oh, I'm gonna make another connection. For some reason, I remember 6th grade going to science camp, and we had to go out for a night hike, and we had to basically, we had to trust our senses and trust our partners. We had to climb these steps that were kind of carved out of a mountain, and we were stumbling all over the place, and it was kind of cool, right? I think one of the main points was to see how we would react once we were out of our comfort zone, and that's kind of what's going on here. Okay, he took great marching steps into the nothingness. I love that. Counting them against his return. Yeah. Wow. He's leaving like a breadcrumb. He's counting his steps. It's so dark he has to count his steps because he might walk right by where they are camping. Or camped, right? Eyes closed, arms oaring, upright to what? Something nameless in the night, lode or matrix? To which in the stars were common satellite? Like the great pendulum in its rotunda, scribing through the long day limits of the universe, which you may say it knows nothing, and yet know it must. It might take me another half an hour to get through this, but let's see. Something what happened here? All right. Eyes closed, arms upright to what? To seek out the upright. Trying to remain upright. Upright to what? Yeah. How you gonna? I mean, it's so dark. How you even gonna know if you're upright? Kind of reminds me of, you hear about people that have, maybe fallen into a river, a lake, or an ocean. They think they're swimming to the surface, right? But they're actually swimming the wrong way. For some reason, I keep thinking of that. Something nameless in the night, lode or matrix. All right. To which he and the stars were common satellites. Ooh, I like this. I know what satellite is, but one thing I always like to do is I like to get all the definitions, right? Because I know by now that McCarthy is making me work. All right, let's see, satellite definition. To collect information. I think it's a way to guide him. Orbiting the Earth. Let's see. Orbiting the Earth. I wish you all were here with me right now. You could help me out. I'm just trying to get an idea. Subordinate, someone or something attendant or dependent. Dependent. Yeah, I think dependent. Okay, I like that. I'm going to stick with that idea. Let's go back. To which he and the stars were common satellites. All right, that's all he's got. He can look up at the stars, right, and maybe kind of situate himself in proximity to that. Right, good. Now, what about this great pendulum? To me, this might be a reference to, Father Time, but I'm gonna take a look. I think it's an illusion. I've never used, a pendulum is something that swings back and forth, right? Let me get, what was the other one? A rotunda. Rotunda. Large room, a large central area, and a large one. Okay. All right. Is he talking about just a gigantic clock or something? Let's see. Like the great pendulum in its rotunda, scribing through the long day movements of the universe, of which you may say it knows nothing, and yet know it must. All right. Well, let's not get lost here. This is our key word. This is basically describing something, but what? Okay, all right, it must be talking about this. Okay, so the man is relying on the stars, right? He and the stars are common satellites. They are in a consistent path, right? Or, as it said, an orbit. Like the great pendulum in its rotunda, in its box, scribing through the long day movements of the universe, of which you may say it knows nothing, and yet know it must. Wow, I might have to come back to that one. Okay, class, I'm back and I kind of fell down a wormhole. I was reading a book about the great pendulum and all sorts of things. And I'm not so sure that I'm comfortable, but I got a few ideas. One extreme to another. Constant change, one extreme to another is I think what we need to focus on, right? Constant change, and one thing is going to lead to another. All right, kind of like a dichotomy. Okay, so let's go back to our quote. All right, okay. Something nameless in the night, right? So this guy's trying to place himself, right? Situate himself, right? You know, this feeling of a normalcy to be upright, and he's relying on a bunch of senses that maybe, you know, aren't, I mean, they're used for balance, they're used for different things, but it's something that, you know, that we are not always aware of. So we are relying on human nature, right, to kind of take over. All right. So to which he and the stars were common satellite. So there's something nameless in the night. All right. Like the great pendulum in its rotunda, scribing through long day movements of the universe, of which you say it knows nothing, and yet know it must. So I don't. Maybe imagine, you know, a grandfather clock and just swinging back and forth, pendulum. It goes to the right, it goes to the left, right? It's constant changing. It's almost like, you know, it's this perpetual state of motion. There's a constant idea of change. You're sure, you're not. I think he's using that to describe what's going on here, right? Of which you may say it knows nothing, and yet know it must. His eyes are telling him, you know, I don't know anything here. I am so disoriented, right? Yet he must know this. Right? So I think that pendulum is kind of explaining this man as he struggles, knowing that he can't see 2 inches in front of his face, right? But he has to. His survival depends on it. So, something like that. Wow, I wasn't expecting to spend so much time on that, but anyway. Am I still going here? Okay, cool. So that's my example. I want to move back up here. We talked about some things to kind of pay attention to. I had a couple more. Hopefully, I remember. So we talked about. I argue that there's a reason why McCarthy decides, you know, to sometimes say, I'm not going to follow the rules, right? So think about that. Think about why. What might that reflect? You know, there's no punctuation. If he uses a contraction like don't, you know, there's no apostrophe. And pay attention to this relationship, right, between these two, as I think it's used in the book, right? They are each other's world. And I say, do the roles change, right? Is one more a dominant character now, right? So think of like the teacher-student relationship. Who's the teacher now? Who's learning? Does this change? You know, if you are paying attention, you probably say, well, I'm sure it does. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told us to pay attention to it, right? Notice the man's conflict with himself, man. He's got one heck of a conflict, right? He's pissed. He's mad at his wife. She took the easy way out. His son is the only thing that keeps him going. his child. Also, dreams. Right? Notice the dreams. He dreams often of color. Right? And pay attention to the trout. Right? Pay attention to the trout, because these trout are going to come up at the very end of the book. So not only what he dreams about, but notice in the film. Yes, there is a movie, and I promise you this: if you watch the movie, you are going to find it's really hard to read the book, right? Because you're going to know the plots, and you're not going to care about these long sentences and this description. You're going to be like, I already know what's going to happen. So I love the movie. I usually show it in bits and pieces, but I just ask you to wait. Let's see. Oh, other things. There's lots of descriptions where the man and the boy are being linked, described, characterized as animals. You know, in our section for this week, at one point, I think they're compared to farm animals standing in the rain. I think cattle, livestock. Why? Maybe McCarthy is telling us, right, that these two humans are being stripped away of a lot of the kind of the fluff, right, that makes us human. The way we style our hair, right, the kinds of clothes we want, right, and they are being reduced to animals, and right, because they have to rely on especially the man right now, their survival instincts, something like that. So yeah, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but any one of these things could be turned into a paper topic. I planned on a 5-minute video, and I think I'm almost at 30 minutes. I apologize, but as you can see, there's a lot to unpack here. So if you made it this far, thanks.